Volunteers to read today?
I can read.
Yeah, yes, Prabhu.
But I don't have the book, so I have to read from the screen.
Pardon, I actually there are so many mics which are unmuted, so I don't know who spoke now.
I spoke Subhadra Devidas.
Yes, Mataji, you can read.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Seattle, September 21, 1968. The immediate reason Srila Prabhupada went to Seattle was that two of his disciples, Upendra and Gargamuni, had just begun an ISKCON center there and had invited him. For several years, this had been Prabhupada's method of spreading Krishna consciousness in America. He went to a city, state, preached, and directed his disciples. He had done so in New York, San Francisco, Boston, Montreal, Los Angeles, all with good success, as he had written in a letter of March 1968. We want to open hundreds of centers so that people may take up Krishna consciousness. And we need many enthusiastic boys and girls for carrying on this great mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, had not mentioned Seattle or even the United States when he ordered Prabhupada to preach in the Western countries. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had said the chanting of the Lord's holy names, Hare Krishna, would go to every town and village of the world. The street chanters and back to Godhead magazine distributors in Los Angeles and San Francisco wanted to try Seattle to test the chanting in the streets of a conservative city, Seattle, the home of Boeing aircraft manufacturers, had a population of 560,000, a university, and several good colleges. On Prabhupada's order, the devotees went ahead to join the Seattle temple in time for Prabhupada's arrival. While Gargamuni was still desperately trying to find an apartment he could afford, the devotees received Prabhupada in a hotel room. From Prabhupada's room, the window looked out at the 600-foot tall Space Needle and the monorail, leftovers from the 1962 Seattle World's Fair. The devotees squeezed into the small room as Prabhupada sat behind a low desk and pulled his harmonium to him. Should I play? He asked, smiling. They pleaded. Yes, and he began playing, the fingers and his right hand moving deftly across the keyboard, while his left hand pumped the harmonium's bellows. He sang Gauranga Bhalite Habe Pulaka Sharira, Hari Hari Balite Nayane Habe Mira. Their meeting with him in the room was happy, but the song was not a light thing. The sound poured forth, both from him and from the little harmonium. They were bhajans. He had explained to them songs of devotion, this one by Narottam Das Thakur. When will the time come when, while chanting Hare Krishna, there will be tears in the eye? He played, and the expression of his face in singing seems like crying. The song, he said, meant when the mind is completely purified, free from material anxieties and desires. Then I shall be able to understand Vrindavan and the love of Radha and Krishna. And then my spiritual life will be successful. Um, the first night in town. Prabhupada was to drive from the hotel to the ISKCON temple, a house rented by the devotees in a quiet suburban neighborhood. A devotee carpenter, Naranarayan, had done excellent work with $50 converting the living room into a temple room. And close behind long red satin curtains was an impressive three-tiered altar. The altar was paneled with with the same cedar as the walls. The altar's bottom self had a brass incense holder, brass flower faces, two silver double candle holders, a conch shell, and a picture of Lord Vishnu. On the middle shelf were a black and white close-up of Prabhupada, a large color poster of Lord Chaitanya, and a simple ink drawing of the Panchatattva by Prabhupada's disciple Gaurasundar and Govinda Dasi. The top shelf held the 12-inch deities of Lord Jagannath, Subhadra, and Lord Baladev, who were clothed in simple golden satin without jewels or garlands. Around the room were nicely framed pictures. To the left of the altar was an Indian print of Gopal with his arm around a calf. Forming a border near the ceiling were several of Guru Das' captivating black and white close-ups of Srila Prabhupada on morning walks in San Francisco. On the left wall was a painting of Krishna driving Arjun's chariot. To the right of the altar was Prabhupada's Vyas Asana. The room was small. The devotees had designed a Vyas Asana, 3 feet high, wedged into the corner so that the room could accommodate many people. The back of the seat was cushioned with deep blue velvet inset with large and decorative golden upholstery buttons. The seat itself was gold velvet with a gold bolster pillow, a small gold velvet canopy with a fringe hung above the Vyasasana. Srila Prabhupada arrived at the temple accompanied by his servant, Kartikeya, and his secretary, Govinda Dasi, coming up the steps onto the porch. They were greeted at the front door by the welcoming kirtan of the devotees in the small temple room. As Srila Prabhupada made his way from the door towards his Vyasasana, all the devotees in the room except for one bowed down. The exception, standing midway between the front door and the Vyasasana, was a newcomer, a girl named Joy Fulcher, who had only met the devotees that very day, and as Srila Prabhupada passed by her, she also bowed down. As Srila Prabhupada was taking his seat on the Vyasasana while Kartikeya adjusted the microphone and Govinda Dasi adjusted the tape recorder, the devotees sent Joy forward to offer Prabhupada a garland of red roses and red carnations. Joy had made the garland stringing the flowers in a symmetrical pattern, but when she placed it around Prabhupada's neck, the garland fell asymmetrically. Feeling undone, she turned to go sit down. Thank you very much, said Prabhupada in a soft but deeply resounding voice. Joyful cheer, so I sat down and listened to his lecture, but I could not understand his accent. I was struck with the impression that here was a very elderly person who had taken great difficulty to come and speak to us. I could understand there was nothing motivating in it for him. I felt very much that he didn't want to cheat me. I also had the conception that this person was inconceivably humble. Because of his quoting the scriptures, because of his references to his guru, Maharaj, and because of his general attitude and his soft-spoken voice, I could understand that he was not trying to impress anyone and that he was very humble and dependent on his Guru Maharaj. After the lecture, I raised my hand to ask a question, answering 3 or 4 questions first. He finally took my question. I asked him, Srila Bhaktivedanta, how is it that this universal presence, which is humanly inconceivable, at least to me, at this time, how can it have the form of Radha and Krishna? The devotees had preached to me prior to his arrival that the absolute truth which I, from my reading in yoga philosophy, impersonally called universal presence, was actually Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead, and his consort Radharani. Srila Prabhupada very distinctly answered, by his mercy. But then he spoke loudly, you can't make the sun rise, and similarly, you can't make God appear before you to answer your doubts. I was thunderstruck that he chose this particular example, since only 4 months earlier I had climbed a mountain by myself and sat there all night waiting for dawn, when I would make the sun rise. But when dawn came, it was a cloudy day, and so, of course, I did not make the sunrise. The fact that out of all example, Prabhupada chose that particular thing to answer me hit me like a thunderbolt. Yeah. Then his divine grace softened his voice like a rose, and indicating his disciples with a wave of his arm, he said, but you just associate with these nice boys and girls here. Chant this Hare Krishna mantra, eat Krishna prasadam, study my books scrutinizingly, and engage yourself in a little service. And then the Lord will reveal himself to you from within your heart, in his own time, by his own sweet will, with all his name, fame, form, pastimes, paraphernalia, and entourage. Within a few days, Garga Muni found an inexpensive 2-room apartment for Prabhupada. Garga Muni who was accustomed to the lower east side of New York City, thought this Seattle apartment a good bargain. By New York slum standards, it wasn't bad, but there were much better places in Seattle. When Prabhupada entered with the devotees, it became obvious to everyone that the apartment was a disaster. Prabhupada went to the windows and looked out at the bricks wall of the building 6 feet away. Because of this building, no sunlight couldn't enter the room. Prabhupada looked below at the dark, dingy alley littered with garbage. The curtains in the room reached only halfway down the wall. The tiles were peeling in the bathroom. Nothing was clean, and there was no bed. Anyone staying with Prabhupada would have to walk through this room to reach the bathroom only when Prabhupada entered with his bright, transcendental presence. Could his disciple fully understand that the apartment was not at all suitable? Prabhupada, however, didn't complain. It doesn't matter, he said, and taking the chadar and placing it on the floor. He sat down. Although the neighborhood was noisy, Prabhupada was tolerant, but he admitted, "This place is not nice." And then, looking up at the devotees in the dingy room, he asked, "Why have you put me in this dungeon?" Struck at heart by these words, the devotees knew they had to find a better place, and several of them went out to search. Why had they put him in a dungeon? Jayananda, Narnarayan, and Govindadasi got into the van and drove off, vowing not to return until they found a place Prabhupada would like. They moved towards the Capitol Hill area and finally found it a for rent sign on the lawn of a nice house situated near a lake. Although it was a basement apartment, the many ground level windows made the rooms bright and sunny. Jayananda and Govinda Dasi talked to the landlord, and Prabhupada moved in the next day. He liked the he liked the tulip lining his window and the view down the sloping green lawn to the shore of the lake. He liked walking in the backyard from where he could see boats passing. That other place, he, chuck- he chuckled, was like being in the womb of the mother. And this place is like coming out into the world and seeing the light. The apartment was well furnished, and Prabhupada put his Radha Krishna deities on a dresser before the mirror. Vehicle made a nice backdrop. Early morning, early every morning, Prabhupada would go on a walk, usually to Volunteer Park, where he walked by the reservoir. The path around the reservoir's perimeter was several miles long, and although some of the young men would become exhausted from the walk, Prabhupada enjoyed it. One morning, while Jayananda was walking with Prabhupada, they approached a man who had just pulled a fish out of the water. The fisherman held up his catch, dangling it as if offering it to Prabhupada. "Anyone for a fish dinner?" the man asked cheerily. Prabhupada smiled. "No, you enjoy." Prabhupada kept walking until he was past the man and then added, "and suffer." They also walked in an area filled with many rose bushes and many birds. Peacocks roamed freely. It is written in the Shastras that wherever a saintly person goes, become a tirtha, or a place of pilgrimage. In India are many tirthas, most of which are places where the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his great devotees enacted some lila. There are no such tirthas, however, in America. But after Prabhupada's preaching, beginning in New York City in places like 22nd Avenue and Tompkins Square Park, and later in Golden Gate Park at Stowe Lake, Finish Beach, or Volunteer Park, then even these American places became for Prabhupada's followers significant, never to be forgotten sites. Prabhupada took advantage of the presence of the traveling Sankirtan party in Seattle. He told Tamal Krishna he wanted to organize a world Sankirtan party with 12 men, 12 women, and himself going all over the world. But for the present, the devotees went out daily in the downtown city. In Seattle, citizens were astonished to see young Americans with shaven heads, saffron robes, women in saris, playing cymbals, and singing Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. The devotees would chant Hare Krishna for hours, give out cards with the Mahamantra printed on them, and sometimes bring people back to the temple. As a result, attendance was good at Prabhupada's evening lectures. With the devotees chanting on the streets during the day and Prabhupada speaking at night, the city was quickly becoming spiritualized. Therefore, each evening, the small cedarwood panel temple room of Lord Jagannath was filled with considerable transcendental excitement. For Prabhupada, it was very encouraging to lecture to a hall crowded with both disciples and guests. Can it go up? After the evening kirtans, everyone would sit down on the floor, and some people would even stand outside the house, looking in and listening at the windows. Prabhupada invariably began by chanting in a strong, simple melody. The refrain, Govindam Adi Purusham Tam Aham Bhajami, and everyone would repeat in chorus, Govindam Adi Purusham Tam Aham Bhajami. He would chant it half a dozen times and then begin his lecture. Prabhupada's teaching of Lord Chaitanya had recently been published, and he often lectured by having a devotee read out loud. Prabhupada would listen, and whenever he felt moved to, he would interrupt and begin speaking. This Krishna consciousness movement, Prabhupada explained, has to be understood through the teaching of Lord Chaitanya. He appeared in Bengal, a province in India, 500 years ago, and he specifically preached the Krishna consciousness movement. To execute that order, we have come to your country. My request is that you try to understand this Krishna consciousness movement with all your knowledge. Scrutin, scrutin, Scrutinizingly, don't accept it blindly. We have this book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and other books also, many books. So try to read them. And we have our magazine, Back to Godhead. We are not sentimentalists, that we are simply dancing. Dancing has got great value. That is, if you dance with us, you will feel it, and not that some crazy fellows are dancing. The most intelligent persons are dancing, and yet it is so nicely made that even a boy like here, he is a boy, he can take part. Prabhupada emphasized that Krishna consciousness was universal. It was full of sound philosophy, and yet it was very simple. The simple message was God is great, and we are his part and parcel. And to prove it, he gave simple examples. The hand is part of the body and has great value when working as part of the whole. A small screw in the typewriting machine is very valuable as long as it is working as part of the machine. Otherwise, it is useless. Similarly, unless the individual spirit soul engaged in devotional service to Krishna, he is incomplete. Prabhupada spoke some basic Krishna consciousness for about a half hour and then asked for questions. Always at least a few hands raised. He recognized the outsiders first. It was not unusual in those days to find young people, college students and hippies, asking cosmic questions, dabbling in yoga and Eastern philosophy often. However, they had many different things on their minds. including drugs, and were frequently confused. But Prabhupada experienced with over 3 years of constant preaching to young Americans had already heard almost anything they could possibly ask. Young man, young man, is there a communication that is not the word itself, but beyond words? Perhaps a vibration reaching for the oath. I mean, does one attain a communication, something understood between you and myself and my brother, an experience like this, the soul doing, or is there something else beyond the verbal? Yes, Prabhupada replies, this Hare Krishna, man. Hare Krishna, Prabhupada, yes, man. But can you tell me how this can be? How to talk that language all the time rather than English or other languages? Prabhupada, it doesn't matter that Hare Krishna can be sounded in Sanskrit only. You can sound it in English tone also. Hare Krishna. Is there any difficulty? These boys are also sounding Hare Krishna just like the piano. If you touch, there is dung. It doesn't matter whether an American is striking or an Indian striking or a Hindu striking or a Muslim striking. The sound is sound. Similarly, this piano, Hare Krishna, you just touch it and it will sound, that's all. Someone asked about meditation. Prabhupada asked, what do you mean by meditation? Sitting alone quietly. How is it possible? Prabhupada asked, is there any experience that the mind is not acting when you sit silently? You have to engage your mind in something. What do you engage in it? Yes, Prabhupada replied, that is Krishna. We engage our mind in Krishna, the beautiful Supreme Personality of Godhead, not only simply engaging the mind, but engaging the mind in action with the senses. Because mind is acting with our senses, your mindset. Let us go to that newly started ISKCON society. So your legs carried you here. So mind, thinking, feeling, willing. These are the functions of the mind. You have to fix up your mind, not only thinking of Krishna, but also working for Krishna, feeling for Krishna. That is complete meditation. Someone asked if a Christian, by reading the Bible and following Jesus' words, require a spiritual master. As soon as you read the Bible, Prabhupada replied, that means you are following the instructions of Lord Jesus Christ. So where is the opportunity of being without a spiritual master? It was referring to a living spiritual master. Prabhupada, you may accept this spiritual master or that spiritual master. That is a different thing, but you have to accept. When you read the Bible, that means you are following the spiritual master represented by some priest or clergyman in the line of Lord Jesus Christ. So, in any case, you have to follow a spiritual master. There is no question of being without a spiritual master. Is that clear? Many different sects of Christianity interpret the Bible in different ways. Prabhupada, there can't be any interpretation in the Bible, then there is no authority. Just like this is a watch. Everyone has called it a watch. And if I call it a spectacle, then what is the value of my being spiritual master? I am misleading. It is a watch, and that I must say, this intelligence you must have, who is a pseudo spiritual master and a real spiritual master. Otherwise, you will be cheated, and that is being done. Everyone is interpreting in his own way. There are thousands of editions of the Bhagavad Gita, and they have tried to interpret it in their own way. All nonsense, all nonsense. They should all be thrown away. Simply you have to read the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Then you will understand. If anyone can understand the clear passage, just like the Bible, God said, let there be creation, and there was creation. What is the question of interpretation? Yes, God created. You can't create. Where is opportunity of interpretation? Am I right? In the beginning of the Bible, it is said like that. God said, let there be creation, and there was creation. So what is your interpretation? Tell me, what is your interpretation? Can any one of you suggest? One can explain. That is a different thing. But the fact that God created that will remain, that we can't change. Now, how the creative process took place, that is explained in the Bhagavatam. First of all, there was sky, then there was sound, then there was this, and but the primary fact of that God created that will remain in any circumstance, not the rascal scientist who says, oh, there was a chunk and it split up, and there was this planet, perhaps this and likely this. All this nonsense. Why perhaps? Here it here is clear statement. God created, that's all, finished. Another guest said he didn't feel subordinate to anyone. Therefore, he didn't feel he had to bow down to anyone. Indirectly, he was criticizing the devotees' offering of obeisance to Prabhupada. It is a material disease. Prabhupada replied, to think that we don't have to bow down. He demonstrated logically that nature forced each of us to be subordinate, to bow down to old age, disease, death, and many other things. Guest, okay, but who or what should I bow down to? Prabhupada, since you are being forced to bow down, now you have to find where you shall be happy even by bowing down. And that is Krishna. Your bowing down will not be stopped because you are meant for that. But if you bow down to Krishna and Krishna's representative, then you become happy. The disciples were submissive, and therefore only to them would the spiritual master impart knowledge of Krishna consciousness. But some of them were also doubtful, and Prabhupada had to convince them with the same logical arguments he used with the outsiders. Devotee, Prabhupada, how do you logically explain the impersonalist, the existence of the personality of Godhead? Prabhupada began to explain the three features of the Absolute and compared them to the three features of the sun, namely the sunshine, the sun disk, and the sun god. Using the well-known example, he thoroughly explained the, can it go up? Um, he explained the existence of the Supreme Person as the source of all expansions, including the impersonal Brahm. But the devotee was not yet satisfied. How does one explain to such an impersonalist the absolute truth logically? I was told Srila Bhaktivedanta Vinod had such a proof. Prabhupada, apart from Bhaktivedanta, try to understand in your common sense, painstakingly Prabhupada explained again, this time at greater length. He quoted the Vedanta Sutra first, Janma Adi Asya Yata, explaining how everything is existence come in existence comes from the Supreme Absolute. Therefore, as we are persons, there must be a supreme person, the reservoir of all personality, from whom everything comes. As we experience that our Father is a person, therefore we are persons. Often Prabhupada was simply saying there is God and one should love God. But one student protested why love of God should come in the form of Krishna consciousness movement. Student, if our first concern should be to serve God or Krishna, then why should there be a movement? You might get so caught up in the movement that you are forgetting about serving God. Prabhupada, why am I serving God? This movement means I am serving God. What do you mean by serving? If Krishna says, you obey me, and if I say, you obey Krishna, is this not service? Didn't? Yes. Prabhupada, so we are doing the same business Krishna says. Surrender to me and give up all other engagement, and I shall give you protection. And we are saying the same thing, that you surrender to Krishna and you will be happy. So we are voluntary giving service to Krishna. Preaching work is the best service. If you preach rightly, if you preach wrongly, that is the service. You have to simply say the same thing as Krishna. Student, but the movement might get in the way of serving Krishna. Prabhupada, it is service to Krishna because we have understood what Krishna wants. We are preaching the same thing. Student, was there always a kind of movement? Prabhupada, yes, the movement is always there, just like in the Bhagavad Gita. It is said, my dear Arjun, whenever people are misguided and there is too much irreligiosity, and that time is a, and at that time I appear myself. The material world is such that if something in is set right, still sometime it will be distorted. Therefore, a movement is required whenever there is deterioration of the real truth. But it is the same movement, not a new movement. The movement means God is there. He is great, and we are all subordinate. Our duty is to abide by the order of God. Then we are happy. The movement is simple. The same movement was preached by Lord Krishna. The same movement was preached by Lord Jesus Christ. The same movement we are also preaching, simply accepting the authority or the greatness of the Supreme Lord and engaging oneself. That's all. There is nothing new. Don't try to see something new. It is the oldest because God is the oldest. You are also the oldest, and your relationship is also the oldest. Therefore, the movement is also the oldest, but the process adopted is suitable for this time. That is also not new, not manufactured. It is recommended for this age, just like during the winter season. The process is to protect your body from being affected by cold. Similarly, in this age, Kali Yuga, it is recommended that God realization only possible by this chanting of Hare Krishna. Many of the youngsters would try to catch Prabhupada in contradictions. One boy noted Prabhupada's statement that it was natural for a child to drink milk and not eat the meat of an animal. The boy argued that if Prabhupada's emphasis was on being natural, then it is natural for a child to grow up, save his head, and serve God. Or was that just another form of socialization? Another challenger asked why the International Society for Krishna Consciousness was incorporated. Another asked if the sadhus in India who wore long hair and wandered in the woods needed spiritual masters. The question revealed the guest uneasiness. Prabhupada was demanding a full commitment of the truth to the truth. They could understand that if they accepted that he was presenting the truth, then they too, like the bright-faced disciples sitting beside them in the crowded temple room, should bow down to Prabhupada and Lord Jagannath, join the movement, shave their heads, and go out chanting Hare Krishna. At least that was the implication. So those who deeply wanted to avoid the austerity, the surrender, the uprooting of a whole lifetime of illusion, sought out the flaws, the possible contradictions, but kind and lenient though he was, Prabhupada never demanding that they shave their heads or live in the temple, continued to defeat their doubting arguments, expose the weakness of their atheistic reasoning, and smash the folly of their material desires. He ruled forth as Krishna's representative, speaking from the blue and gold velvet Vyas Asan in the front room of the Seattle house. Women, I wish to see proofs of afterlife in writing so that I can read it and study it and examine it carefully. Is it available in writing? Prabhupada, read Bhagavad Gita. You will understand everything. Women, that's 68 volumes. Prabhupada, no, Bhagavad Gita is one volume only. 18 chapters, 700 verses. You can read it in 3 days. It is not very difficult. We have published Bhagavad Gita as it is. And I think if you read it, you will get so many nice informations. After reading Bhagavad Gita, you read Srimad Bhagavatam. Then you get further enlightenment. Then you read teachings of Lord Caitanya and you get further enlightenment. And for general information, we have this Back to Godhead you can read. It is not that simply we are talking. We are backed by sufficient knowledge and literature. And so it went into the evening. 9 o'clock turned to 10 o'clock and then 10 o'clock to 10:30. Is Bhakti Yoga for everyone? What about Kundalini Yoga? Why did Krishna ask Arjun to fight? What about Christ consciousness? What about the Trinity? Prabhupada was completely absorbed in defeating arguments and answering questions about Krishna. A samadhi of debate on behalf of his Lord Krishna. Yes, he did expect them, if they were gentlemen, to accept his presentation as correct and to make a real commitment to Krishna consciousness. So here is the offering. Prabhupada said, take Krishna consciousness. Now it is your choice. If you can take it, it is good. If you don't take it, then it is your misfortune. Is there any difficulty to accept our formula? I ask all of you. Is there any difficulty? I am asking this. You have asked so many questions of me. Is there any difficulty to accept this formula? The assembled guests and devotees murmured in reply, no. So, so why don't you take it? Prabhupada laughed. It is so simple, nice. Try to understand by your knowledge. We are not pushing forcibly. You have got your intelligence, argument, logic, everything, but you will find it sublime. The order of Chaitanya Charitamrita says that we are placing it for your judgment, not that we are pushing it by force. Sometimes it is said that the Mohammedans propagated their religion by holding a sword in one hand and the Quran in another hand. Either you accept Quran or there is sword for you. Krishna consciousness is not like that. It is placed for you for your judgment. And if you like, you can accept. Otherwise, I came here empty-handed. I shall go back empty-handed. There is no loss, no gain. Prabhupada law with the satisfaction of the completely surrendered servant. Then he asked them all to chant Hare Krishna. Tamal Krishna, at that point, I could recognize that Prabhupada was my complete Lord and Master. Whenever he would get up from the Vyas asana, I would just grip his feet and hold them. I I would hold his feet at my head and I wouldn't let him walk at all. I was so eager to be at Prabhupada's lotus feet. I wanted to be with him as much as I could. I would feel very torn apart when he would go to another temple. I remember sometimes after the program, he would finish eating a piece of fruit and would throw the peel on the floor. We would all jump for it and fight with each other in front of the altar and Prabhupada. We would be scrapping around like little puppies. Prabhupada would lean back and laugh. He thought we were making very nice advancement by this. Word get around that Prabhupada, whose disciple, whose disciples were chanting downtown every day, was himself chanting Hare Krishna and speaking in the temple on Roosevelt Way. A local TV station came out one evening to film the proceedings, bringing big camera, microphones, and bright lights into the temple room and shooting Lord Jagannath, the devotees dancing and singing, and excerpts of Prabhupada speaking. The following day, they returned to Prabhupada's apartment and, and filmed him playing harmonium and speaking with a woman interviewer. They turned their cameras on his personal altar with close-ups of his Radha Krishna deities as well as the covers of his books, Bhagavad Gita as it is, and teaching of Lord Chaitanya. When Prabhupada saw the footage on color TV, a few minutes of the evening news, he thought it was good. He wrote to the devotees in London, this new cast should help our movement here in Seattle, as so many people will see and come to our temple. You can try for television appearance there also is possible. After the TV showing, there was a brief fame. When Prabhupada came to the lecture the next night, the temple room was filled with about 50 extra guests, young men and women. Prabhupada seemed pleased, but actually they were all one group, a fun-seeking fraternity house with their dates. They managed to stay through the kirtan, but as soon as Prabhupada began to speak, they all got up and left, leaving the devotees and the usual number of about a dozen interested guests. The devotees were also going to the university, and among the students was considerable interest, at least casually. A representative of a student newspaper came and talked at length with Prabhupada. When two men came to Prabhupada's apartment and presented themselves as reporters, Prabhupada's secretary allowed them in, thinking they also wanted an interview. But their interview became an interrogation. They challenged Prabhupada as to why he was not teaching that Jesus Christ was the only way to God. They were angry that Prabhupada was preaching on the campuses. When Prabhupada informed them that he accepted Jesus Christ as the Son of God, they demanded, "But do you believe or not that Jesus is the only way?" Prabhupada replied, "Do you believe that God is limited or unlimited?" "Unlimited," they admitted. "Then why are you limiting him?" said Prabhupada, "by saying that there is only one way to get to him. Even an ordinary man can have 20 sons. Do you mean to say that God can have only one son? Why are you limiting him?" Within a few minutes, the men were speaking to Prabhupada in loud voices. Became obvious they were not reporters, and they told him they were in fact local ministers. When they became blasphemous, the devotees asked them to leave the house. Prabhupada wrote a letter to disciple in New York. The priestly class of Christian and Jewish churches are becoming envious of our movement because they are afraid of their own system of religiosity, because they see so many young boys and girls are taking interest in the system of Krishna consciousness. Naturally, they are not very satisfied, so we may be facing some difficulty by them in the future. So we have to take some precaution. Of course, this priestly class could not do anything very nice till now, but the dogmatic way of thinking is going on. So anyway, we shall have to depend on Krishna. Before Prabhupada's arrival in Seattle, Upindra had written the head of the Asian department at the University of Washington, requesting a speaking engagement. The professor wrote back entirely in Sanskrit, knowing well that the boys would not be able to read this letter. Upindra gave the letter to Prabhupada, who immediately translated it and answered the professor with a letter written in English, both quoting many Sanskrit verses. Prabhupada concluded his letter, "I am sorry that we can't reply in Sanskrit. Our process is not academic, but purely spiritual." Prabhupada had Upindra sign the letter as if he had written it himself. Prabhupada went out himself to speak in several colleges. At the University of Washington, he had Tamal Krishna give an introductory talk, speaking directly what he had heard from Prabhupada. Tamal Krishna spoke boldly about so-called holy men or swamis who are cheating the public. He took considerable care to demonstrate that our spiritual master is in complete agreement with Lord Jesus and the Bible. The Bible is bona fide, he said, but like a pocket dictionary compared to the unabridged. There is a need to hear a person like our spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, speak, said Tamal Krishna. He then read an article from the New York Daily News. Headline: Retreat for Priests Who Drink, featuring a sanatorium that had been opened for some of the 5,000 alcoholic priests in the United States. I am not saying that all priests are like this. He said, that's not at all what I am trying to get at. But the article goes on to say that alcoholism is not treated as a moral failure, but as a disease. But that's absurd. It is a moral failure. These priests have the choice to drink or not to drink. They choose to drink and get drunk. These are men who are leading us back to God. The priest is, you must have someone who is pure. To teach about God required a moral qualification. Our spiritual master spends 100% of his time in praise of the Supreme Lord. In praise. We ask you today, please listen closely and just try to understand his teachings. Just listen and test with your reasoning ability and your intellect to see whether this is not the bona fide way to the absolute truth. Now let His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada speak. Prabhupada listened from the orange cloth covered dais where he sat in the auditorium. Tamal Krishna had stood and spoken, and now he joined the other saffron-robed men and the women in saris who sat at Prabhupada's feet, his voice echoing with implications in the large hall. Prabhupada spoke to an audience of over 100. He quoted the first Om Agyana Timirandasya, explained that everyone in the material world is in darkness, and the spiritual master is he who opens our eyes with the torch of knowledge. If human society does not have the urge to come to the light by searching after God, then mankind is no better than the animals. To illustrate the point that human society is a precarious condition or lack of God consciousness, Prabhupada told very nice story. One rat, he said, was troubled with a cat. So he came to a saintly person. My dear sir, I am very much troubled. What is the difficulty? The rat said, the cat always chased, so I am not in peace of mind. Then what do you want? Please make me a cat. All right, you become a cat. But after a few days, the cat returned to the saintly person and complained that he was being chased by the dogs. The saintly person gave him the benediction. All right, become a dog. Then the fox chased the dog. The saintly person blessed him again. All right, become a fox. Then the tigers chased him. The saintly person turned him into a tiger. And when he became a tiger, Prabhupada continued, he began to stare his eyes on the saintly person. I shall eat you. Oh, you shall eat me? I have made you tiger, and you want to eat me? Yes, I am a tiger, and I shall eat you. Oh, then the saintly person, cursed him. Again you become a rat. Again you become a rat. So he became a rat. So our human civilization is going to be like that. The other day I was reading in your world almanac, in the next 100 years, people will live underground like rats. So our scientific advancement has created this automatic bomb to kill men, and it will be used. And we have to go underground to become again red. From tiger again red. That is going to be. That is nature's law. Devi hi isha gunamai mama maya duratvaya. If you defy the laws of your state, then you are put into difficulty. Similarly, if you continue to defy the authority, the supremacy of the Supreme Lord, personality of Godhead, then the same result. Again, you become red. As soon as there is atomic bomb, everything, all civilization on the surface of the globe will be finished. So people may not like it. It may be very unpalatable, but the fact is like that. Prabhupada explained that God consciousness he has advocating was not a particular rigid religion like Christian or Hindu or Muslim, but it was universal. He explained the word dharma as one's characteristic, that which can't be taken away, the unalterable characteristic of the living entity, he said, is the tendency to love and do service, and that is our eternal religion. So I do not wish to take much of your time, Prabhupada concluded, after no more than 10 minutes, but simply I want to impress upon you that this chanting of Hare Krishna is so nice that you give an experimental way. You can see, you chant for at least 1 week and you see how much you have changed. So these boys, they are chanting in the street. We have got many branches in your country. One in London, one in Germany, and everyone is taking part in it. It is increasing. So we don't charge anything, neither you have got any loss. If there is any profit, you can try it, but there is not loss. That is guaranteed. Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thank you very much.
Mata, you can stop here for today.
Yeah.
Okay, so we in this session today we saw in great detail how Prabhupada dealt with his audience. Now, one very important feature of how Prabhupada dealt with his audience is because it is natural for Prabhupada because he has realization of God. The reason that we struggle sometimes when we try to preach is because our concept of God is faith based. So, to the degree that we have faith, we are able to defend Krishna consciousness. But Prabhupada is not faith based. He's got experience of Krishna. So it is very natural for him to very easily, and very vehemently defend God or Krishna consciousness. Like, for example, we saw how when the Christian preachers in the name of Christian ministers in the name of journalists came and started challenging him, he said, how can you say Jesus is the only way? Do you believe God is unlimited? He said, yes. If he's unlimited, how can he have only one son? So Prabhupada was these things were very, very effortless for Prabhupada. That because of the fact that he was talking from the vantage point of experience. We struggle due to our position is only limited to faith. And depending on the strength of faith that we have, Shraddha, that's our only asset. So based on that, we are able to present effectively or not. But Prabhupada was purely based from experience. So it's effortless for him. It's effortless for him to present about God. So that's something which really stood out in today's reading. And we see how Prabhupada repeatedly emphasizes this point throughout his teachings. And here also you can see, he's saying, you try to act too smart. You try to lord it over material nature. Material nature is going to strike back and make you into a rat. Actually, the problem with modern civilization, as Prabhupada would always say, is that it creates a conception that material world is good and material world is a place for improvement. This is the illusion, because by nature, everything in this world is heading towards destruction. That is why it is said that the moment a child is born, from the perspective of the Vedic perspective, each day the child passes, yes, there is a description, the child is growing and all these kind of things. But essentially, that is not the central message. The central message is that with each passing day, the child is approaching death. So from the time that anything is created, time begins to destroy it. That is the idea. So there is nothing that can be of value in this world, including cities, including homes, including everything is headed for destruction. The moment something is created, the very nature of this material world is that it's going to be headed for destruction. So this was Prabhupada's message repeatedly, that if you try to control nature or lord it over material nature, you are inviting your destruction very quickly. As it is, material nature destroys. But if you try to lord it over material nature, then your destruction becomes very quick. You're rapidly increasing the pace of whatever you're creating. The civilization is going to turn us into rats, as Prabhupada says. Okay, so this is something which I observed, how Prabhupada is very, very, throughout these things, Prabhupada is not trying, in his books, Prabhupada is not, at any point, does not try to make living in the material world as an enjoyable experience. He tries to distinguish between the two things. Krishna consciousness is an enjoyable experience, but living in this material world is definitely not an enjoyable experience. So, amidst the non-enjoyable experience, make your life worthwhile by taking up to Krishna consciousness. It is not that Krishna consciousness is meant to make our material life enjoyable. No, because there's nothing called enjoyable as far as material life is concerned. Nothing called enjoyable as far as material life is concerned. It's just an illusion. So Krishna consciousness breaks down that illusion and places us firmly in the platform of Krishna consciousness. Just like, for example, we see forms. Let's say, for example, the human body. What do we see? We see beautiful skin or eyes or all these things. But beneath that, what is there? Is the flesh. Just like they say, beauty is skin deep, right? To just remove the skin, everybody would be horribly looking. So what is it? So something which is horrible is covered by the skin. Similarly, material nature has got this avarnatmika potency of covering potency. It covers the fact that when we look at an object, we think, oh, beautiful creation. But what is being hidden from our eyes by the avarnatmika potency is that the moment it's created, it's beginning to deteriorate. We can't see it, or it happens very gradually, that we just miss that point. That is called the avarnatmika potency. Okay. Anyway, I mean, the reason that I'm saying this is because we saw so much of dialogue with Prabhupada. Everywhere he's trying to cut down the concept of material life being worthwhile. He's trying to establish again and again the Krishna consciousness is the only worthwhile engagement for the soul. Of course, earlier on, we saw how devotees took him to that apartment and he complained it's like living in a mother's womb. It's a dungeon, and Prabhupada was very happy when he was taken to a different place with the meadow and all those kind of things. He liked open spaces. Prabhupada was generally like that. Of course, he tolerated whatever he could. Like, for example, when he was living in the Bowery, in New York, just tolerated whatever. He was willing to tolerate. But given a choice, he always preferred to be in open spaces and with gardens and things like that. Okay, these are some thoughts that I had. Any questions, any reflections, comments? Sailesh, you were able to join us today. I thought you were going for the Rath Yatra.
Prabhu, I'm attending Rath Yatra and listening at the same time. Doing both. Sorry, Prabhu.
Jai, 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 Jai. You're very amazingly focused about hearing Prabhupada's pastime. Amazing. Any other thoughts, reflections, questions?
Harishna, can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yes.
Prabhuji, I have one question, really not exactly related to today's class or something, but still maybe it is related always. We say this animal, this one, we say that we are part and parcel of Krishna, and so all the qualities, like in minute, we are all living entities are having in us. So similarly, like the animals and trees, do they have independence, Prabhuji? Because we have minute independence which we act according to our will and wish sometimes. What about the animals and trees?
Their free will is covered over.
Like, can you explain, Prabhuji, a little bit?
Their free will is covered. They can't exercise their free will to love God.
Okay. But they have free will, you mean to say, Prabhu?
Very limited, in a very limited sense, no? The dog can run around here and there. That's it. Very limited.
Okay. Okay.
Very limited free will. I mean, basically, the essence of free will is to love, actually. The choice, you know. But they are not even capable of making choices, right? I mean, very limited. I'm not saying no. But when it says free will, it means that choice to be able to exercise the choice to love God. That's why only human form of life is considered very rare. When I say human, it means 432,000 types of human beings, not just human beings like the earthly human. It could also mean demigods and things like that. The human species, other species, animal. That's why it said it's so risky, because if you get trapped in an animal's body, you cannot even practice bhakti. You know, you cannot exercise your free will to practice bhakti. It is covering of free will. Of course, you could say that it is because of misuse of free will that you're put into a situation like that. So ultimately, coming from free will only. I'm not saying no, but you have placed yourself in a situation. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So you have placed yourself in a situation where you are able to exercise free will very little. For example, Prabhupada said that, let's say, a doctor or even a lady who commits abortion. What is the punishment for that? Whatever is the lifespan of the child, whatever is supposed to be lifespan of the child. Let's say the child is supposed to be born and supposed to live for 70 years. Okay. Because you have killed it in the womb, you will not be able to see sunshine for 70 years. So what is happening there? I'm just saying. So the point is, you have confined yourself into a situation, right? Like Prabhupada is. So it is because of exercising free will in a demoniac way that you're losing an opportunity for freedom. So like that, to be engaged in an animal body is because we have misused our free will. So we are misusing our free will and then engaging ourselves into an animal body. Hope that is clear. Yes. I mean, free will is there, but it's like covered. That's it.
Yes. Yes, Prabhu. Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, I have a question.
Yes.
You said 70 years one will not see sunshine. Means you will be born blind or you will live underground? How
No. Basically, I think that Prabhupada is saying that I don't know, but I mean, also Prabhupada says that you will also be confined within the womb. All these kind of things he says. But essentially, the punishment he says is for 70 years, whatever is the lifetime of the child, you'll not be able to see sunshine. That's the punishment for abortion. I mean, there could be more than that, but this is definitely one aspect of that punishment. It could be more, but Prabhupada did say this, so that's why I'm just repeating. I don't know whether it means, inside the womb or out, where, but you will not be able to see the sunshine, Prabhupada says. And this thing is actually very depressing, because people who do not have access to sunshine, they're always generally very depressed people. It is not to be able to see the sunshine for 70 years, not a joke. I mean, that's one child being killed. These gynecologists and others, I don't know how many children they killed. And similarly, some mothers have three abortions, 4 abortions. And it's just wild.
Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so I think we'll stop here for today. We'll again resume next Sunday. Thank you all very much for joining. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyascha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namah.